Hello students, and welcome to Read Aloud time for chapter books. And as you know, we're reading Overboard, Survivor Diaries, Overboard. And we stopped last week on chapter 6. And at that point, matches were being lit, or attempting. Okay, remember Travis and Marina are stuck on the island. He needs to make a fire fast because they are both going to suffer from hyperthermia, which means literally freezing to death. Okay, but Marina's in much more severe danger. Her wrist and her arm is broken. He's not really sure, but he's got to find out. And right now, there's no lighter, and the matches are not lighting. So that's where we left off. Okay, and Travis is right now focused on lighting the fire. I focused on the match. I pressed my lips together and lined up the matchstick against my finger. This was it. This one would work. I had the hang of it now. I flicked it across the matchbox, and the match hair flied up bright, and then it died. I was left with nothing but a smoking match and darkness falling fast. And that is the end of chapter 6. Chapter 7. Marina pointed at the bag on the ground with shaking hands. Magnus, inside. I pulled out the block I had thought was a lighter. Marina made sawing motions. Shave, on tinder. She gestured weakly. I peered closer and saw that there were little cotton balls inside the baggie. What was she talking about? This black stuff will light the balls on fire? Marina closed her eyes and sank into the coat. Marina, don't leave me here alone. I need help, Marina. No response. Marina! I leaned toward her. My heart pounded as I tried to hear hers. Please let her be alive, I thought to myself. I pressed my ear to her nose. I sighed when I felt and heard her breath. Then I studied the block, turning it over in my hands. It looked like one side had been gouged away by a knife or something, and the other side had a black stripe down it like a matchbox. The cotton balls dropped into my pile of small sticks when I shook out the bag. They were coated in some kind of goo. I pulled out Marina's knife from its sheath. When I saw it on the boat, I would have never had guessed I'd be using it. I scraped the knife down the side of the block, and little pieces came off that looked like metal shavings. I pushed harder on the knife with the block facing up and dragged it along the block toward my foot. More pieces came off. Then I flipped over the block, and I studied the stripe again. How did I light this fire? I tapped it with a knife and was surprised when a little spark flared off of it. Whoa! I looked at the knife in my hand and then back at the block. Holding the block up, I struck it with the knife again, harder. This time a shower of bright sparks came off. This was easier than the thin, small matches. The knife wasn't going to snap in my fingers. After a few tries, I figured out how to aim the sparks into the shavings. They burst into flames, and then the cotton balls ignited. I sat back in stunned. I made fire! I turned to Marina. Hey, look, I made this! I dropped the block and put my hand in front of her nose again. Phew, still breathing. The flames were starting to die. I put more sticks on top and the flames caught. Pretty soon the fire was crackling and popping, and the heat bounced off the boulder toward us. I held my palms toward it and I smiled. Oof. But my smile faded as I looked up. Darkness was falling fast. Are they going to find us tonight, Marina? Relief crashed through me when she opened her eyes, but she said nothing. We looked at each other over the smoke of the fire. She looked scared. I remember how scared I was in the ocean and how her calmness had made me feel better. Don't worry, I said, forcing my voice to sound relaxed. I'm going to make us a shelter. We're going to survive the night, and then the rescuers will come. I wasn't sure about any of it, but it looked like Marina needed to hear it. I tried to picture what our tent looked like when we set it up in the backyard, back when Stacy used to do cool things like that with me. I need a long branch to use as a ridgepole, I told Marina. I'll be right back. Racing toward the forest, I searched the ground as I went. I brought all the things I gathered back to the fire and piled them next to Marina. As I worked, I talked. We have to make sure we don't set up next to an ant nest. I made that mistake before. Stacy's ants crawling up her legs and biting her inside her pajamas. You should have heard her screaming. Oh, it was hilarious, but let's not go there tonight. There was another boulder near the fire that was as high as my chest. We were above the tide lines here, and the ground was dry. I propped one end of the long bare branch I'd found against the top of the boulder, with the other end on the ground. Then I leaned the board we had brought to shore with us against the branch so it looked like one side of a tent. I had to stop to add more wood to the fire. I don't like the dark, I told Marina. Not since I had to sit in a dark room for 2 whole days. No TV, no computer, no games. It sucked. I didn't tell her the other thing I was even more afraid of than the dark. From the other side of the shelter, excuse me, I used pieces of driftwood and then filled in the spaces between the driftwood with dried seaweed and smaller branches. Once it was done, it looked like a lumpy lean-to with the opening facing the fire and the ocean. I bent and crawled in. There was enough room to turn and lie down with my feet at the narrow end and my head just inside. Though it looked dry, the ground was uneven and damp. It was almost too dark to see. Mosquitoes whined in my ears. I brushed them away and raced back to the forest to collect armfuls of leaves. I brought them to the shelter and threw them inside. Then I pulled the branches off the trees, the kinds with lots of needles on them. Needles and cobwebs and mosquitoes stuck to my neck and my face. I swatted at the bugs and ran back toward the light of the campfire. This is our mattress, I told Marina as I arranged the branches on top of the leaves. I could see the light of the fire. The mosquitoes weren't as bad around the smoke. Come on. I pulled Marina up and helped her slide in feet first. With the fire in front of us and the walls up, the heat of the fire filled the little shelter. After collecting more firewood, I crawled in next to Marina. Once I stopped moving, I heard the quiet of the waves the waves had left in their wake. Instead of crashing, now they barely made a noise, like frying eggs as they hissed up and down the gravel. An owl hooted somewhere behind us, and I tensed. Marina, are you awake yet? She mumbled. I needed someone to talk to so that bad thoughts wouldn't come. The noises were scary out here, not at all like our backyard with the porch light on and the sound of the neighbor's TV and cars driving by. And here we have a picture of their lean-to. That's for the birds. Suddenly, I heard a loud spray burst out of the ocean. What? I yelped. And then I recognized the blowing noise I'd heard on the whale tour boat, and my racing heart calmed. I threw more wood on the fire and watched the sparks rise into the black toward the stars. I lay back down. Tomorrow, rescuers are going to find us. Right, Marina? No answer. The sounds of the humpback's breathing kept me company all through the night. Chapter 8. I woke to the sound of barking. What? Marina said. Her voice was hoarse. She'd been puking in the night, but I must have fallen back asleep. I tumbled out of the shelter. It was still too dark to figure out what the weird shadows were on the beach. When my eyes adjusted, I saw that the tide had slid up to the rocks. Hello? I yelled, hoping there were rescuers with dogs. I started towards the shore, but stopped short when I saw what the noise was coming from. You found me, I said, and you brought your friends. Huh? Marita said from the shelter, louder. 2 dark, hulking outlines wriggled into the water with a splash. I gazed out at the sleek heads bobbing in the ocean. I was sure I recognized the mottled one with the gray specks. She let out a bark when she saw me and dove back under. Seals, I told her. Selkie is checking up on us. My tongue felt glued to the roof of my mouth. A throbbing pain pulsed at my temples, and my throat ached. Marina rolled over slowly to peer out of the shelter. Where are the rescuers? They need to find us. I can't stay here. My suit was draped over her like a blanket after she'd taken it off during the night. Her lips were cracked and peeling, and her hair was matted to one side of her head. She looked like she was about to cry. We both desperately needed water. I looked at all the water in the ocean next to us. All the wet noises from the seals splashing around were making me crazy. But I knew from those salty waves crashing into my face that we couldn't drink any of it. "We must be out of the search grid," Marina wailed. "Remember that island we missed? What if they don't find us? My arm hurts. I'm so thirsty. If we don't find water, we're gonna die." I stared at her. What had happened to the robot girl from yesterday? Her freak out was making me freak out. I could feel my pulse speeding up. I needed breakfast. I needed to know where my parents were. I needed to go home. I saw the blackened fire pit, and it reminded me of that feeling I had last night when I lit the fire. I had felt in control. We needed to get warm, and I had done it. If I figured out that problem, I could tackle this one too. "We need to stop and think," I said. "Where would we find water?" Marina was too busy peeking under the bandana at her wrist. It was as if I were the older one now. "I'll go find a stream," I said. But after searching the thick forest behind the shelter, all I found were spider webs, an old tire, and a long white balloon, the kind they used to drape over the sides of boats to keep them from banging into things. I also found a plastic water bottle, but it was empty. I licked my lips. The pounding in my head got worse. When I stepped out of the forest, I noticed that all the grasses were bent over and wet with dew. I licked one, and the moisture felt so good in my mouth. I looked at the empty bottle in my hand, and then at the grasses covered in the morning dew. If only there was a way to get the dew into the bottle. I shrugged out of my sweater and tore off my shirt sleeve. Then I used the sleeve as a rag to mop up the dew on the grasses. I squeezed the rag over the bottle, and it began to fill. It took a while, but I managed to collect almost a quarter of a bottle. I brought it carefully back to the shelter. Marina was still huddled under my suit. When she turned and saw me, her eyes went big. "Oh!" I was proud of the way she looked at me. Then, not like I was someone who didn't know port from starboard. "How's your arm?" I asked, handing her the open water bottle. She took a drink, measured how much was left, and then took another small sip. "I'm really sick. It's making me scared." She wiped her mouth and then ducked her head. "I get scared too," I said. "I'm the most scared person of anyone I know." "About what?" She handed me the rest of the water. I thought of my parents and sister, of my gut worry over whether they got into the life raft, but couldn't talk about any of that. When I was on the gymnastics team, I started gathering more sticks for the fire. My friend Chad and I dared each other to do a giant swing on the high bar. You're not supposed to go on the bar without coach to spot you, but we snuck in. I landed on my head, and I got a concussion. For 2 days, I had to sit in a dark room to heal my brain. Since then, my mom treats me like I'm about to fall on my head again any minute. "So you're afraid of gymnastics? Is that why you're not on the team anymore?" she said. I stopped scraping the black block with a knife. I'd never told anyone why. "What is this?" I held the block out to her. "This is magnesium. The scrapings burn quick and hot. You can light fires if you don't have any matches." "Yep," I said, striking the knife against the block. I sighed. I guess I didn't realize how high the horizontal bar was. I couldn't do any of it after the accident. Not the rings, not the vault, not even the horse. Floor wasn't my best event, so I quit. I can hardly climb stairs now. If I go too high, I start to shake and I feel fluttery. Marina paused, eyeballing me. When she gestured into the fire, "We need green branches." She looked calmer now, not so freaked. I was relieved to see her eyes focus. It must have helped her to hear about other people being scared. "Green?" I asked. "Live branches to put on the fire. It makes smoke. We have to be ready to signal helicopters." She licked her lips. "And we need more water." My stomach growled loud as we both looked around. Our eyes met and she gave me a shaky smile. "Food too, I guess." "My pocket." I pointed into the emergency suit on the ground next to her. "Animal crackers," I said as she pulled out the Ziploc bag. "You thought of everything," she said. We both dipped our fingers into the crumbs and licked them off. Didn't make me any less hungry. Then I looked at the bag I'd left on the ground yesterday. It had a few drops of condensation in it. It reminded me of something Stacy had done in the 8th grade. Hey, we can use this to make a solar still. A what? My sister had to do a school project for environmental science, something to do with clean energy. I was surprised she was so smart, but then she told me she had read about it online. I laid out the plastic bags we had, one large one from Marina's pockets and 2 small ones from mine. If we fill these bags with plants, something green, and leave them in the sun, they sweat inside. We can make our own water to drink. Marina grinned. That is smart. I found clean stones and put them in a corner of each bag with the leaves, and then carefully laid them out in the sun. The water would collect at the lowest point, where the stones were, and I could add water to the bottle again. During the day we waited, ready for the fire. But there were no rescuers, no helicopters overhead, no boats coming to get us. We saw big ships passing through the mouth of the strait, but they were far, far away. How are they going to find us if they don't come close enough to see our smoke? I asked. Marina crashed her head to look up. She'd been drinking most of the water we got out of the solar stills, but she was still sick. She needed to go to a hospital. I don't know, she replied. In the course I took, they just told us how not to drown. In all the stories, people didn't drown and they got rescued. But they'd better hurry if we can't live much longer on just morning dew. We could die from dehydration easier than drowning. I wish she'd stop talking about dying every 2 minutes. Then an eagle flew over us. There's another one, Marina said, scanning the tops of the trees. The eagle landed on a branch, the white of its head stark against the backdrop of the forest. It stared down at us. I wonder if... She perked up. There, I knew it. We're saved. What? What is it, a helicopter somewhere? Where? I stood up. I almost got dizzy. An eagle's nest. This is where they set up the new cam. Now I know where we are. Wow, we're further up the cape than I thought. We'll never be able to walk to town. It's too far. What are you talking about? What's a cam? There's a camera in that tree. The DNR just put it up so people would watch the eagles being born. All you have to do is go up there and signal. She looked at me and then with dismay, because she had just remembered my confession. My gaze ran up the height of the tree. At the same time, my stomach sank. It was high. I can't, I whispered. What did you say? I can't, I whispered. And that is the end of chapter 8. Bye-bye, everybody. See you tomorrow.